Hello everybody, and again welcome to my channel and my playlist Sewing Made Easy. As in this video today, I would like to show you how easy it is to make out of a normal sleeve in your coat, in your blazer, in your sacco, in your jacket, a pliant vent on the side. It is really not difficult, promise, and it is just as well for beginners or for some of you who've been sewing for a while already but don't know how to change a pattern for your normal sleeve that you have into a blind vent. So did I get you interested in my project for today? Then you should stay tuned because I'm going to show it to you right now. Let's have fun! On any pattern of a coat or a jacket that you will have, you will usually, most of the time, have a sleeve in two parts, the upper and the under sleeve part. As you can see here, I marked my 1 centimeter seam allowance already on my pattern, and I also marked exactly my seam allowance on the bottom of my sleeve of 4 centimeter. I like to always mark all the seams that I will do in the width on my pattern, because then I never forget and I don't need to think, did I edit the seam allowance yet or not? So you should do that as well, then you're always on the safe side. So the first thing, if you want to do a blind vent, you have to decide how many buttons you want to put on this and how high they're supposed to be. Well, I worked out from my finished line of my bottom of the sleeve, I want my blind vent to open up to 22 centimeters, and I will put 5 buttonholes and 5 buttons on here. So what I have to do, I take this part and add onto my finished edge that I had here, I add a 4.5 centimeter wide piece of paper on. And as I said, I want the vent to be open 22 centimeters. I add another 2 centimeters, so I'm on 24 here. And when I do the pattern, I drop this down approximately a centimeter. So here on the length, I'm on 23. Exactly the same thing I do on my undersleeve, because later on, when we're stitching this part will go exactly on top of there, and this seam later will be stitched. So we got our vent right here. And of course this one also I added 4.5 centimeters from this edge that we had there before. And what you have to do, definitely on the upper sleeve, you have to put an interfacing onto here to give it some stiffness for the buttonholes and for it to lie properly when you're finished with the sleeve. And the same you got to do on the seam. In the width of your seam allowance, you put an interfacing on here, the same on here. You do not need to put the interfacing on the undersleeve. You can do, but it is not really necessary. So what I have to do now, I of course cut my pieces, which already you've seen right here, exactly as my pattern is. That is the way I cut those parts. And as I mentioned, the interfacing I put on here and on the bottom, and the same on this one. I put it on the bottom, but not here on the actual vent part. What do I have to do now? With those parts, I go on my sewing machine and I will just close this seam with that part all the way to my 2 centimeter point, which I measured there before. So this part I'll stitch all the way to there. So as you can see, my seam has been closed by myself all the way down to this 2 centimeter point underneath on the padding as I showed you. Then I go to my iron board, turn this around. First I cut in not where my last stitch was, but here where the sideways cutting started, there I cut in all the way all to my seam. This is for later as we need it. So now I put my edge exactly in that position as my width from the pattern was, which I added, and I iron this one flat. So I can see already how my vent will look like. And it should be a nice following edge onto the seam that follows up here. Then I turn it around and I first iron over the 4 centimeter seam bottom that I have here. After I've done that, I take the little part here, the underarm, and I iron this one, and I definitely iron it shorter than the upper arm, because there's nothing worse than if you have a finished arm and the bottom will show out. That's why you have to iron it about 2-3 millimeters on this corner. Here it doesn't matter how high you are. You can also pull this around a bit and do it like that, but it's got to be in this point where it's visible later. It has to be 2 millimeters shorter. So iron those nice and flat over. Now take this edge from the underarm, put it exactly in your fold that you've just done, and just stitch 1 centimeter up here. Turn it inside out and it will look something like that. Well, first of all it looked like that, but you have to cut this just above the edge. You have to cut this in because you will need it later to fasten together with this piece. So when you've done that, you take the upper arm, and we're doing a nice, we call it a letter corner or couvert corner. I don't know what you call it. All right, I show you how you do it. You fold it open, turn it around like this. Now you got 2 fold edges here. Hold this corner where they meet down a little bit. Now put exactly the fold over on top of the fold over. They got to be exactly above each other. Fold this down, and from that edge you stitch a right angle corner from your ironed edge down. You can see it on this drawing here on my table that you got a right angle here now. So from there to there you close this. When you've done that, you cut what's standing over off, turn it around, and it looks like that. And the difference you see here, this is correct, because I was putting my 2 ironed edges on top of each other, as on the seam on the bottom we had 4 centimeter, but on the vent part we got 5.5, and that makes the difference that I got standing up here. So that is exactly correct, exactly right. So turn your corner nicely out, and now it looks something like that. And so this upper arm edge always stays nice and flat. That's why we cut in here. We put this away, and you stitch once on the upper arm 1 millimeter from the edge all the way down to the bottom. And the seam, of course, because of that, is always lying towards the upper arm, as also the seam down here is lying that way. So now you mark your buttonholes, you put this away, and you put your buttonholes in exactly the amount you want and in the size you want. And as you can see, even for a household machine, this is now very easy to be done, because you got no seams nowhere. It is lying really flat under the machine, and your buttonholes will turn out very well on this. So that's what I'm going to do now. As soon as you got all the buttonholes in the positions where you decided to have them, you're practically finished, because now you take your parts, turn it around so you can see the left side, so you see exactly your 2 edges from the 2 parts. Check again on the bottom to make sure that your undersleeve is not sticking out over the upper sleeve. Put it like that in position. Take it in both hands on your sewing machine and now stitch along this edge here in a 1 centimeter width, as that is my seam allowance, and turn here and stitch as far in this corner as you can do with your machine. And that looks then something like that. So we look again from the left side. It's all together here like that, stitched all the way into this corner. Now all I have to do is close my seam, my underarm seam right here, all the way down like that. Iron it apart and my sleeve is ready for stitching into the coat. And as you remember, in the beginning of the video I said to you, I'm showing to you the way to do a pliant vent on the sleeve. Well, why a pliant one? Because you can also see I got buttonholes here, I could open them up. But during the video I also showed you that in the inside I closed that seam. And mainly you can see that, not here on the outside, but you can see it when you look inside the sleeve, that my lining is nicely been sewn all the way around the sleeve. That means I don't have the vent here. That means I cannot totally open it up. But that is not the case anyway. What you should do on a jacket, it should be a blind one, if you want to have one at all, with some nice buttons on. And by the way, I will put you the link of how to make those buttons in my info box underneath here, because I made them myself. The video is in German, but you can see exactly what I'm doing, as this is a real easy and nice way to make any kind of buttons that you need for any of your garments. So that is it for today. I hope you had fun watching my video. Don't forget to subscribe me if you liked it, and send me some comments from all over the world, as I really like to know where you're watching me and from which lovely countries you're writing me from. So take care, stay healthy, and stay tuned. I say goodbye with many greetings from Germany.